Hey,
Hey, we're here.
hey, we're recording. Hey, welcome to the podcast. You're here with producer Jimmy Kennedy today. I'm
Hey,
Noel
no,
Casler. Hey,
thanks.
brother. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we were just talking before the show about podcasting, right? Because you're the expert on podcasting and I'm the novice.
That's what you say, man. Yeah, we're trying to figure out what the best platform is for Noel Casler. That's at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, getting Noel established and ready to go. So,
Thank you,
yeah.
man. How's the weather out there?
Snow on the ground. It's a very temperate 45 in Indianapolis today. So, we might get a little suntan lotion on and get some rays, but
Nice.
we'll see.
Nice. It's snowing here right now. It's always snowing these days. It's like Game of Thrones. So
Yep.
get getting ready to go beyond the wall at this point.
Yep. Um,
So,
Absolutely.
so let's talk about some headlines, man. Did you read about this Ted Cruz thing? Obviously, this whole debacle, which is just a scam. Like these guys don't care. His wife is a big managing director at Goldman Sachs in the energy sector, the private wealth fund there in Houston. So shit was party time when that happened. They know how their energy grid is set up. They know that private companies can jack the rates when the demand goes up. So it was a windfall. And she went to celebrate down in Cancun and he went with her and wasn't coming home, dude.
Yeah.
Had to.
I mean, it was I saw the different memes of Ted Cruz and making fun of his Cancun trip. The one that I couldn't get out of my mind was the guy who stole the podium during the insurrection.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
had Ted Cruz's face and a margarita, tipping the other way as he's waving to the camera. So
That's funny.
it's it's unreal how shameless these folks really are at the end of the day. It's
I
it's
know.
sad.
Exactly. And why do they want the jobs? Here's my thing. Like all these guys, they get elected and they get the jobs and they go golfing. They go to Cancun. Like you don't want the gig. You're like old white man with a lot of money. Why don't you just go do like old white man stuff? Like why don't you just go play golf? Why don't you go kayaking? Like build a gazebo, make beer. Like, why don't you get out of the way and let the people that want to take over? They're not going to muscle you out. They're just going to roll up their sleeves and go to work. And AOC is a perfect example of that. Representative Plaskett, Stacey Plaskett from the U.S. Virgin Islands. We're getting some real heroes that are coming forward in this time because that's what happens is like it's progress, and we have to stop looking at it from a place of fear. Trumpism was about making people fearful. Like these people are coming to take they're not coming to take anything. They're coming to work hard. Like I used to do a joke in my set about caravans and he was like, they're invaders, and I'm like, they're not invaders. Those are hungry men and women looking for jobs and a place to raise their kids that is safe. Like that's the kind of people you want to hire. Like how'd you get here today? You take a subway? No, I walked from Guatemala. Okay, you're hired. You know what I mean? That guy's going to show up on time and he's going to work his butt off. But there's been a system where it's like a lot of people made money that they were able to hand off generationally. It's generational wealth. So it's like your kid doesn't have to work that hard and be that smart because he's born a certain way and he's going to go to the right country club and he's going to join the right fraternity at Vanderbilt. And then when he gets out of Vanderbilt, he's going to call his fraternity brother who's got a job at Goldman Sachs, and that guy's going to get dumbass a job. And then he's going to snort coke for 8 years and not get fired. And then they're going to send him to rehab. And then he's going to settle down and have a few grandkids, and the cycle will get repeated. And it's a comfortable, cushy life. And I know it. I live in that world. I live on the Upper East Side. Like, I'm in recovery. Like you've never seen white privilege until you've been into like an AA meeting on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, dude. Because like people screw up so big time and never get fired. This is like, oh, we're gonna send you to like rehab or something. You're at UPS or something. You're at Amazon, like collecting stuff, and you you have pot in your urine, you get fired. There's a different set of rules in this country, and it's been designed to protect the ruling class, for lack of a better term. And nowhere is that more prevalent than in the South. You see that with Tom Cotton. Tom Cotton was basically attacking racial equity yesterday. He was basically saying anything that makes the playing field fair is unfair to the white man. His ancestors owned slaves, in Arkansas. It's like he's been passed on generations of wealth, and that has become part of the firmament of this society. And the if you want to take it a step further, it's like the guys that control this know that if they manipulate sort of the working class, lower middle class, resentful whites, then those guys aren't going to look at who really has the power. Because Mitch McConnell isn't looking out for the people of Kentucky that keep voting for him. He's worth $20 million. He's looking out for himself. But he's convinced the guy in the coal mine that through his racism and through his like Second Amendment, boisterism or whatever you want to call it, he's looking out for those guys, and it's just not that way. Do you know who Howard Zinn is, Jimmy?
I don't recall that.
It's all good. Howard Zinn was a professor at Boston University. He wrote a book called The People's History of the United States, which it came out in 1980. And it was basically like the real history of this country, not what they teach you in the classrooms, which was like Christopher Columbus was a hero and he came and discovered America. Like, no, he went to the Caribbean and he slaughtered people because he wanted gold, and he enslaved people like he was a monster, who was looking to make money. And he didn't actually ever set foot in North America. But you're taught this thing, I pledge allegiance to the flag, and there's a lot of good things about America and this democracy, but there's also a lot of exploitation. And that's one of the earliest lessons of this country is that the guys that own the factories, the industrialists, and before that, the guys that own the plantations, they had indentured servants and they had enslaved people, right? And they sort of figured out it's going to be easier if the indentured servants resent the enslaved people, that come from Africa, than if they turn and look at the Europeans that are holding them down, the white European males that are owning the land. It's like, we don't want them figuring out that we're making 90% of the money. Let's let these guys fight over the crumbs that we give them. And that model has taken in this country. And the only time that it was pushed back upon was like a union labor movements that happened, that was fought against like vociferously. They would go and shoot people down who were organizing, in Manhattan and the sweatshops and the garment districts and stuff. The industrialists fought tooth and nail to like destroy the advent of unions, but then unions happened. Unions happened and it provide a livable wage. And not only that, like people fostered, I lost the word there. Flourish. There you go. That's why you're here, Jimmy. That's what a good producer does. They flourished when we built this middle class. And then after World War II, you had the New Deal, right? The New Deal sort of came about from the Depression, but that's basically democratic socialism. We had the GI Bill. So you came back from serving your country and you grew up in a household that was Depression era and you didn't even barely have enough to eat. And all of a sudden you got to go to college after serving the war, or you got to go work in a factory where you made enough money to buy 2 cars, have a wife who could stay home and put 3 kids in college. And buy a home in the suburbs. We built Levittown, Long Island. We built all these suburbs and we built a middle class. And then we built sort of the richest nation on earth in the 50s and 60s. That became like the model. And that was the American dream. Like if you worked hard, you would be rewarded and the next generation would go that much further. That got done away with during Reagan's era. Reagan came in, it was like slash all that stuff. Forget about the unions. They're evil. The Democrats are liberals. They're socialists. They're bad. Greed is good. And that's when I came of age in the 80s. I saw Reagan come in and cut school lunch programs and cut funding and all that kind of stuff for the arts. He was attacking my friends. I grew up in a poor neighborhood with a single mom who had me at 19 when I was in elementary school. I got a couple perspectives because I later lived with my grandparents in the suburbs of New York City in a more well-to-do area. But when I was in, struggling in elementary school, living with a single mom, my friends were, it was a mixed race neighborhood, and we would get bused to these schools in a nice white suburb, and kids would eat free breakfast. They had a free breakfast and a free lunch program. Reagan came in and cut those programs. He said ketchup is a vegetable, so I saw my friends go hungry, and I saw the results of that stuff, and it sort of spread out from there. It became like corporate America was king now, and whatever turned a profit for your board of directors was okay. It was Reaganism that did that. That's what sent all your companies overseas, because CEOs realized, hey, I can build this thing in China for a lot cheaper than America, but at the same time that was happening, which was the worst enemy to the sort of the middle class white American male that or family that we just described, at the same time that was happening, they were also demonizing the left. Carter was a great president. He was a progressive, brilliant guy, but they were able to sort of paint him as this liberal, and, he was ineffectual, and you needed a tough John Wayne like character like Reagan, who was basically like a racist who instituted racist policies. He wouldn't admit the AIDS crisis happened. There was a plague on America and he wouldn't admit it. But they were able to sort of like brand that kind of idealism. And a guy named Lee Atwater was crucial in that. He was the campaign director for Bush, and came out of that Reagan era. So my point, this is a long-winded point, but they were able to sort of sell the people that live in the suburbs, the guys that work as contractors, the guys that worked in those factories, that were now on an economic downturn in life. They were able to sell them the idea that like the Democrats, and these highfalutin elites that went to Yale, like Bill Clinton and stuff, weren't on their side, when in actuality they were. Obama was one of the best things that could have happened to the middle class here in America. Universal health care is a great idea. You want health care. That's where it's going. The people in Kentucky need that stuff. But if you're able to package it in a way that people think it's from the other, and it's foreign to your way of life, it's a very effective thing. And then you couple that with like waving a flag or waving a gun, and you get these gun cultist freaks that are just like, they're coming for your guns. First of all, that's the dumbest thing you've ever heard. There's 400 million guns in America. There's like 3 guns for every person. They're not coming for all those guns. If you're a smart dude and you got a bunch of guns, ain't nobody coming for them. Stick them in the closet, put them in the basement or whatever. Like, no one's going to find them. You got enough firepower in this country to last for the rest of time, So the whole argument the NRA makes, that's about selling guns for gun manufacturers. It's not for the, owners. It's a lobbying arm of gun manufacturers, but it's been sold as a lifestyle brand. And Trump and Trumpism sort of codified that whole thing into this WrestleMania brand of like, I'm down with those guys. I'm team Hulk Hogan. No offense to Hulk Hogan, but you know what I mean? You're the wrestling guy, but it was a lifestyle thing. And I see them here in New York. I'm an hour outside of the city and guys drive by in their pickups with their "Don't Tread on Me" stickers and their Blue Lives Matter flags. Blue lives do matter, but you know what? The same people with those flags just killed a bunch of cops. There's hearings as we speak on Capitol Hill today. And Ron Johnson is sitting there trying to say like, hey, wasn't it really Antifa that did this? And you guys are just trying to make Trump bad? It was Trump who did it. He was selling bus rides on his Twitter feed a week before the thing, But if you sell it back to the people like, nope, that's the bad guys and you're the good guys, it's very effective. That's how terrorism takes hold in the Middle East. They go into poor neighborhoods and say, hey, the reason your life sucks is because these guys are keeping you down. They do it in Palestine where they are kept down, but like you're able to like people that have healthy, rich, rewarding lives don't like often go out and kill other people. As part of a movement, but people that have a lot of anger and they don't see a way out of it, and you're able to feed them the lie that if it wasn't just for these other people, you'd be fine. That's a powerful thing that, we've seen what damage it does in the world. I mean, that's how Hitler came to power, So that's the first part of today's rant. What do you think about that, Jimmy? A lot of jokes in there, huh?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the Trump administration being a WWE kind of promotion. Let's not forget one of the first things that Trump held at, I think it was Trump Plaza, was WrestleMania. He's been involved with Vince McMahon for a number of years. His wife was the small business administrator in his administration. So he's not completely foreign to the idea of professional wrestling. And a lot of fans, from my experience, actually believe that these characters are those people. They don't realize that it's a kayfabe, it's a fake thing. The idea of professional wrestling, and it's very similar. Those, if you look at the rallies, it's very similar to a WWE professional wrestling kind of event. The way that it's promoted and talked about on the news.
That's well said, man. It's exactly what it's like. And the whole thing is a show too. I would tell people about, like, CNN was run by Jeff Zucker. Jeff Zucker was the head of NBC Entertainment when I worked on Celebrity Apprentice. He knew all about who Trump was back then, and he knew all about who Trump was in 2015 and 16, but he kept his mouth shut because there was a lot of money to be made, and people are like, well, CNN is liberal. Well, it's not really. They have on, the guy from Pennsylvania, the horrible guy that everybody hates. You know who I'm talking about?
Well, I'm more of a MSNBC fan, but I've checked in on CNN, but even MSNBC is starting to drift to be more conservative. You have Michael Steele on all the time. Bill Kristol is another conservative that they have on all the time. So
Bill's a smart guy, though. Bill's not. I mean, Bill follows me on Twitter, so shout out to Bill. How you doing, Bill?
Bill, you're a good guy.
Exactly. Who's the guy from Pennsylvania? He was like sort of a real evil guy in the 90s, 2000.
I'll look it up.
Dan Savage used to, like, make fun of him. Rick Santorum.
Oh, okay. Yep.
They made a dirty word out of what Santorum made because he was a real homophobic guy back in the day, like Christian conservative, so there was a very rude thing that became what you call Santorum. I won't go into it here. We're a family show. But anyway, my point is Jeff Zucker knew there was a lot of money in the fight, in tuning in, because there's always like a bad guy and a good guy, but the dude who owns the event is the one making the money. So Trump, he was going to Trump fundraisers in the Hamptons. He knew Trump was going to be a cash cow, and now he's leaving CNN because Trump's out of there, so he made a big windfall and now he's out of there. And that's why I tell people, like, you got to verify sort of where you get news. Like, news is entertainment. Like, if it's on TV, it's not really kind of news. It's a corporate arm of an organization that makes you money. Mary Trump followed me today, and Mary Trump's, a big hero to many people. And, when she wrote her book and it came out, and like Rachel Maddow was like, Mary Trump talks about Trump using the N-word. It's like, I had said that years ago. Kwame Jackson said it in 2004 rather, when he was on the show. Holly Robinson said it. Other people have said he used the N-word, but when a white woman who had a contract with Simon and Schuster, which is next door to MSNBC on 6th Avenue in New York City, had, when there was a corporation to make money off of it, it all of a sudden became breaking news. And that's what I try to tell people about. Like, you got to look at the profit structure and things, because it runs all throughout American life. And that's what, Howard Zinn, his whole thing was, it was just like, you have to look at what's motivating the political discourse in America, because there's usually money behind it,
Yeah. And one thing that really disgusts me about this whole facade going on with the Republican Party is the weaponization of Christianity. They've tied the success of America to the success of God. And then they make people that aren't conservative Christians feel guilty about caring about people from outside the United States. They've dehumanized the idea of immigration when we have all the resources to make this the best country in the world for everyone if we choose to. But it's the fact that we are choosing not to do so that I think is the most disappointing part of being an American right now.
Oh, man. Yeah. Jimmy, I made a joke yesterday that, everybody was talking about CPAC, uninvited a speaker. And I said they uninvited Jesus because they found out he wanted to feed the poor, and it's like, Jesus was an immigrant, and he would have been thrown in a cage if he stumbled across America in Trump's age.
Yeah, I mean, they showed a picture of what Jesus would have looked like. He had bronze skin. He
Exactly.
wasn't white.
No,
That's the image that they want you to see.
I know.
And they,
No.
so it's horrible the way that they are using things to manipulate folks.
I know. And, my family worked, like my grandmother was friends with the Berrigans, Daniel and Philip Berrigan, who were like the radical priests. Have you ever heard this Paul Simon song? They talk about the radical priests. They were anti-Vietnam priests. They were Jesuit priests who fought for like sort of what was right and fought against injustice. And that guy in Buffalo this summer, you remember the old man who got knocked down by the cops and they kept walking? Oh. That guy was a Jesuit. They've always been on the front line of humanitarian causes. Sister Helen Pragine has been an anti-death penalty advocate like no other for decades. But so that's my point, is that's real Christianity, is reaching out and trying to help those, less fortunate. It's not the, hey, send me $10 and you too can have a jet, like, yeah. And now Christianity is like Christo-fascism. It's like you see all these Twitter pages with pictures of Trump, like the second coming of Christ. There is nobody more un-Christ-like than Donald J. Trump. There's a great, you want to say something?
Well, no, I mean, it's, I was going to say, I was thinking of that new movie that's out, the Messiah, the Black Messiah versus Judas on HBO Max. Yeah. And it's about the rise of the Black Panthers in Chicago and how, if it's for poor people, it's socialism.
Right.
But if it's for the well off, that's democracy.
Exactly.
It's the way that we frame things. And the way you're just talking about it, it reminded me of that.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I got to meet Afeni Shakur, who was one of the original Black Panthers, and she was also the mom of Tupac Shakur. You got to meet her and Biggie Smalls, Violetta Smalls at the VMAs. Sadly, after both of their kids were murdered or assassinated or whatever, they were shot dead. And they both came together to do a tribute at a VMAs we did once, and they were my assignment. And it was an honor to meet them. And the Black Panthers, that's a story that hasn't been told, or it's been told by the perspective of white folks that feared them, and you look at this summer, you saw the Michigan State Capitol, and all those guys showing up with guns, walking into the state Capitol, threatening to kill the governor. If those guys had been Black, that would have been like, they would have called in the National Guard. It would have been a war, or same at, the US Capitol, if those guys, they were standing down at the U.S. Capitol. I used to work on Capitol Hill. I was a bike messenger there. From 89 to about 92, I would ride a bike for the Congressional Budget Office, and I would deliver packages and stuff and House documents. And back then, the House document room was in the rotunda of the Capitol. It was on the second floor. And you'd go up there and you'd say, I need HR 2616 or whatever, and they'd give you the document. And then I would get on my bike and I would ride it down to, a law firm on K Street. And it was a good way to make money in the late 80s. It's before email and really in faxes and all. Well, faxes existed, but it was a different world, so you could make like $700 a week riding a bike around DC. It was pretty cool. But my point is, I knew my way around that building because I was in there every day, and I got lost all the time. Because you used to always hand deliver things. So if you had to bring something to the speaker's office, it was hard to find this stuff. But these guys went in there and they knew exactly where to go in a building that ostensibly they'd never been in before in their lives, that was designed to be confusing in case it was ever attacked, and then it was attacked and they knew exactly where to go. So, and there was no cops around. And back then they would yell at us if we rode through a crosswalk on our bikes, there would be hell to pay. They'd blow their whistles and pull us over and harass us. But, these guys just got to go attack it because, well, we know why, because of the color of their skin.
Well, and it's sad that, the Capitol is the symbol of our democracy, and it's the symbol of the democracy around the world. And for it to be tarnished in such a way like that, I think the thing that worries me, I'm only 26. I have to deal with this. What I'm worried about is folks my age and younger that have been indoctrinated already. They're watching Fox News all day. They're listening to talk radio, and they're seeing all these images, and they're getting indoctrinated at this point already. What are we going to do one generation from now, 2 generations from now? I think it'll take that long before we're ultimately back at a point where democracy is viewed favorably among the masses. At this point, it's about 50-50 with the way that we look at the vote, and it's scary to see it unfold like this. It really is.
Absolutely. That's well said, Jimmy. That's actually one of my themes, that I constantly tell people. It's like, I'm worried about the children that have been growing up in these households for the last 4 and 5 years with parents that are believing the QAnon stuff, like that are believing Fox News, that are listening to Sean Hannity, that are being told it was Antifa that really attacked the Capitol, because that's what they're being told today. Senator Ron Johnson is putting it in the record. He's asking questions designed to put that in the record. Like, wasn't it true that Antifa was really behind the attacks and it just wanted to make Trump look bad? It doesn't matter if that's patently false, because it is. It's a massive lie. It's already weaponized propaganda when it comes out of his mouth, because it gives the people hearing it an excuse to say, see, Ron Johnson, the senator from Wisconsin, said it's not true. And what happens with that shit, and sorry to curse, but like a guy hears that and then he tells his buddy at the bar after work the same thing. And then that guy wants to feel smart in front of his wife. So he repeats that lie to his wife. And then his kid's sitting there at the dinner table looking up to dad hear it. And then they say it to their buddies, in the classroom. And it's also fun to pick on the weak people, so, and the others. So a lot of the bullyism that Trump, made so popular, I fear for Mexican children in elementary schools and Middle Eastern kids and gay kids and anybody who's different. When you're dumb and you're young, it's easy to participate in like a gang sort of mentality. So to have that legitimized, and sort of validated at such high levels is terrifying. Like, what are Lauren Baubert's kids gonna be like? I wish him the best, but you know what I mean?
Well, the most disgusting thing that Trump did, even after Trump was elected, as an American, I said to myself, look, I'll give him a couple weeks, we'll see what happens, because that's fair. I'm fair. And then he mocks the reporter with a disability on live TV. What does he do in private if he's doing that on live TV?
Right.
And for the people that don't understand, if you go to journalism school, communication school, whatever, one of the first things you're taught is that the media is a watchdog on government. It's designed to protect the people from government. And there is corporate interest now, so it is a little more blurred than it used to be. But the idea that the media is the enemy of the people, no, that is the complete opposite idea. And it's exactly how, other authoritarians rose to power, is discrediting the media.
Absolutely. So, and that's why it was the first thing he did. He's like, don't believe, what you read, believe what I say. Because he also knew how many skeletons he had in his closet. The guy has done some horrific things, vice crimes, sexual assaults, rapes, like you name it. He's been involved with skanky, dirty stuff since the 70s, stuff that was no secret in New York City. Everybody knew who Trump was. He hired NYPD cops as a security detail, so he got away with it. If you were a woman running out of a room that he just attacked you in and you ran into a big ex-NYPD police sergeant, who was going to be like, nothing happened, I'm getting you a cab, and then his lawyer shows up a day later with a check and says, sign an NDA, you're going to do it because the guy's name is on the side of the building and he's best friends with the mayor, Giuliani. So that's how Trump got away with that thuggery forever. But he knew people knew about it because the thing about Trump is he's got a big mouth, so he knew eventually something was going to come out. He knows Putin has all that compromise on him. So like you said, the first thing was like, yeah, don't believe what you hear. Even what you're saying about disabilities, you saw that. He did that at a rally. Imagine the stuff he did like behind the scenes, because I saw it. He called that wonderful actress who's deaf, who was a contestant. He called her retarded. That's his word, not mine. He was like, what is she, retarded? Because her speech is a little affected. I've done Super Bowls with her. Like, she's a brilliant person. And when he was building Trump Tower, he got in an elevator once and, he was inspecting it and he's hitting the buttons and he's like, what are these little bumps? Why are there little bumps on all these numbers and stuff? And they're like, that's Braille, that's for blind people. And he goes, blind people aren't going to live in my building. He's
Yeah,
he's
it's
an ableist. He's a sexist, ableist, racist scumbag. His family was like that. His grandfather was. His kids are worse. His kid Don Jr. is like 100 times worse than Donald Trump. If you can imagine such a thing, it's true.
well, and I saw that video of him with the guns in the background. That looked like a terrorist video, man.
Exactly.
Like what you would see from Al Qaeda.
Right.
Right? Visually.
It is. They're building an army. It is Al Qaeda. They're basically saying, we're here to fight. This isn't going away because it's power and it's an entrenchment of power for the Trump family, because the flip side of that is jail and getting in trouble for tax evasion and stuff, But if you have an army willing to take up arms for you and attack the Capitol, you're going to be less likely to like go after him in your home state. Houston's going to be less likely to sue them or San Antonio for the money he still owes them for his rallies. He wants people to come down to Mar-a-Lago and be like, you ain't taking him alive, like, because if he gets a warrant for his arrest in New York, he's going to be in Florida. And damn, like if Governor DeSantis won't do all he can to protect him, can you imagine having a standoff in Florida? It could happen. He could say, take up your arms and protect the president. The governor's not going to let, New York cops come in here and take me away. And, it's a final stand and they want bloodshed. So yes, Don Jr. posing with those guns, if he was a black guy doing that, he'd be getting a knock on the door. Lauren Boebert is doing it as a congressman. Like, it's insane, but they're thugs. They're mobster thugs that are deeply criminal, and they have deep criminal ties, and they're willing to do anything. And that's why they got away with it in New York, because everybody knew he was mobbed up. People are like, I'm not messing with the mob,
Does there stand any hope that he will be charged in the state of New York? They just got his taxes, right? The Supreme Court said that they're not going to block them from the state level.
That's the word. I mean, I got friends who are former SDNY prosecutors that swear he's going down, that he's getting charged. I'm going to be the last line of skepticism on that, because I've seen him get away with everything, since I was in high school. So I have a hard time seeing him really going down, because I think he can tie it all up legally. A lot of this stuff is civil charges and stuff, so I think, the odds of him getting handcuffed and booked and stuff, which again, my friend in the SDNY says is going to happen, and I'll be dancing in the streets naked the day it does. I'll be down there in front of Trump Tower laughing my ass off, but I got to see it happen, because to me, it isn't going to happen. He's got lawyers. He can, you rich people have a different kind of set of justice. They can get stays and all kinds of things, and they can get probation, or, they can get bail and all this stuff. So, I don't think he's going to be doing any perp walks, but I sure hope he does. But I don't see him ever going to jail, because I think he would like off himself before. I just don't think his ego could handle that. I think he would be like, El Chapo or so. El Chapo went to jail. Who is the guy in Medellin cartel? The other guy.
Yeah.
Died on the rooftop in Colombia, Bogota or something,
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Pablo Escobar.
Exactly. Like, Trump is you're not coming and taking him alive. He's going to hole up in Mar-a-Lago, and you're going to have to like shoot it out with his bodyguards before you get him out of there. In my opinion, he's not just like, all right, I'm going to go to jail. And he's 74 anyway. And his arteries are full of bacon fat, like,
I was going to say, his personal health has to be alarming to some folks around him, I would think.
Well, nobody gives a shit about him. They hate him. So, nobody would be happier for him to keel over than his daughter and his sons. They despise him. But, a lot of people, sometimes guys just don't die. Karma isn't fair like that, because with his diet and his drug addiction, he should have been dead a long time ago, but he's not. And we'll on a lighter note, there's a Washingtonian had a great article last week about like Trump Tower, the hotel, rather, Trump Hotel DC, and like the restaurant there, the BLT Prime restaurant steakhouse,
Right.
And Trump was like, he would have these shrimp, right, that he would have every day. It was the same thing. And that's how it was when I worked with him. It was like he had to have meatloaf or well done steak or something. Like he He eats the same thing over and over. So every time he came into the restaurant, a guy had to appear with a Diet Coke on a silver platter, open it in front of him to make sure it wasn't poisoned or something, And then he had to immediately be served shrimp cocktail, right? But his shrimp had to be bigger than anybody else he was dining with, right? So they had like super extra large shrimp for him. And then, everyone else is getting 16, 20 count shrimp on their plate. Hey, speaking of shrimp cocktail, that was invented in Indianapolis.
Yeah, we have the St. Elmo's shrimp cocktail that everybody gets to try. And that's also a natural COVID test. If you can't smell or taste that, then you need to take 7 to 10 days to
that's funny.
Get it cleared out. But
yeah, I used to come there every time I was in Indianapolis. I would walk down and have dinner by myself in that place. It's a really cool place.
I've honestly yet to go. I know that as a native Hoosier, that's like sacrilegious, but it's like $100, to go out. So it's pretty expensive.
It's super expensive. I was living large in those days because I was a road manager for a rock band, So you got like a per diem, they gave you money to eat every day. Basically, you get $100 like spending money. And that to me, that's a lot of money. So like I would go treat myself to a nice dinner when I had a day off. But all right, well, dude, that's time flies, man. That's like 40 minutes we've been talking. Look what I got here, man.
Oh man, I love that. Thank
you.
They're
everywhere, brother. That's Jimmy Kennedy is our producer today, our guest producer, and his father was a great musician, much beloved musician in Indianapolis and Indiana and all the rock and Midwest Southern states. I've heard his work; it's incredible. You should look him up on YouTube if you get a chance, because that man had some soul.
He did, and I'll tell you, it means a lot to me. I know you've been around some heavy performers, so for you to say that my dad had talent, I know you've seen it firsthand up close. So it means a lot. I get the chills when I turn on some of my dad's tapes. They bring back a lot of good times for me.
Good, man. You can't fake the funk, brother. You know what I mean?
No, you either got the funk or you don't. You
can't fake it. I was watching a documentary last night, and they're interviewing Muddy Waters, and they were like, do you think these white guys, they were talking about like Eric Clapton and, the Stones and stuff. You think these white guys could ever sing like you? And he was like, no, you can't sing like me. You can't fake the soul. They ain't suffered enough. You know what I mean? But your dad had an old soul, and it came out of him when he sang. And that's what moves people. It's not about fame. It's not about technique. That stuff's important somewhat, but like, it's about making people feel something. It's the same in comedy. Like, it's about making people laugh. You can't fake it. Like, you might be a famous comedian and they might clap for you when you come out, but if you're not funny, you're not moving anybody. It's the same thing with a singer. I've seen dudes at weddings that killed it, that were like some of the best performances I've seen. And I've seen all the rock, most of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductions in the last 25 years. I've seen a lot of epic performances, the Grammys, all that. Some of the best musical performances I've ever seen were just random people, that were moving somebody in that particular room or that street corner, wherever it was. If it was working, it works, and God doesn't care. God speaks through musicians, and he doesn't care if you're singing to 10,000 people or 10 people. If you're moving their spirits, you're doing your job. And then your dad did that. So he was a professional, in my opinion.
Yeah. And one quick story that will relate to that. My dad was originally from Noblesville, Indiana. It's just north of Indianapolis. And he did a live concert event there called the Noblesville Street Dance. And so in his hometown, I'm on stage with him, and you talked in a couple other your podcasts about that feeling that you can feel the energy among a crowd. Being in that element with my dad in the zone, feeling 10,000 people, it's powerful, man. Yeah. It's a powerful drug, and it's really cool to feel that.
Yeah, man, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's cool that you identified that, because that's what I chased. I mean, I stayed in my career because of that feeling. And all you have to do is have an open heart, and you'll get that feeling. And it doesn't even matter who the musician is. You might think like, oh, I'm not into that person, or that's not my kind of music. If they're bringing it and you're lucky enough to be there, you're going to feel it. You know, Alicia Keys always makes me cry for some reason. I always end up on these shows and it'll be like Global Citizens in Central Park, or we used to do she came and did this polo event I did every year on the Governor's Island. There's something about when she starts to sing, and she's a great singer, but not the most soulful person. You know, I wouldn't think she's not like Aretha Franklin, who I've worked with too. You know, it isn't necessarily an obvious thing, but there's something about the connection she has with her audience. And she's a wonderful singer and musician, don't get me wrong. But like, there's something about every time I see that girl sing, I cry. And I was at her first gig ever. Her first big public gig was at the VMAs, because Aaliyah had just died tragically, you know, in this plane crash in the Caribbean. And Aaliyah was going to perform on that VMAs, and then she was dead like a week, you know, before the show. So Clive Davis was, you know, very involved in Alicia Keys' career. So they're like, use Alicia Keys, who was basically kind of an unknown, you know, and came out at the VMAs and just killed it. And she was a kid, you know, too. And it was like, man, that's a lot of pressure. You know, you're filling in for this woman who's already passed away, who was at the peak of her career, and you're basically kind of an unknown. That's a tough thing that can go either way. And it went to the stars, and now she's a legend in her own right. But my point is, like, I'll be sitting there in a suit doing my job at a polo event or something, you know, the game, like when they're riding horses. And because you do a lot of weird events when you do what I do in New York. And I'll see her singing to a crowd and I'll start crying. You know, it moves me. And, you know, I used to be kind of embarrassed about that. Now you just feel it, man, because there's only so many times in life you're going to feel that, you know, and it's like sun on your face, man. When you feel the spirit, you got to open your heart and drink it in, because that's what sustains us, brother.
Yeah, no, the one song that always gets me, because the first Super Bowl that the Colts won, I worked with the Colts for a couple of years, you know, Prince played. So
I was there.
I had a real connection with Prince. And you know, it's raining during that Super Bowl and he plays Purple Rain, you know. And so I always had a connection to that song. And anytime I hear it now and I really listen and try to connect with it, I cry, because I think of my dad, you know, watching the Colts win.
Yeah, that was a good day, man. I was there, and you know, obviously Prince was crazy, you know, crazy great. He actually didn't want to play that day. He wanted them to run the tape of the rehearsal that we'd done on the Thursday when it was sunny out. And the producers were like, you have to play. It's raining. Like, if we play a tape of you playing in the sunshine, like, everyone's going to know it's us, you know? So he rose to the occasion and killed it. You know, nobody was better than Prince. You know, I worked with him on other things. That was the penultimate moment, besides the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, where he played that great solo too on While My Guitar Gently Weeps. But I remember when that thing started, I was like, I stood on the field, because we do all the pregame stuff too, you know, the anthem and all that kind of junk, the coin toss. So the entertainment crew is on the field for all that. And I was sort of new to the gig. And I was like, all right, let me stay on the field for a minute, you know, because the team was all the way, you know, the Chicago Bears were like receiving, right? So they're at the opposite end of the field. So I stayed in the end zone, right? Like at the north part of the field. And I'm like, well, let me stand on the field and watch this first play. And I'm standing there with a buddy in the end zone, right? And all of a sudden you see this guy running towards us with the football after getting the kickoff. And it was Devin Hester. And he runs into the end zone, and like a ref comes over and yells at us, like, get the hell out of here. What are you doing? And, you know, we were only there because the odds of like a guy running the entire length of the football. But if you remember, he scored a touchdown. You know, I think it was the only touchdown I think they got. That was Rex Grossman too, right? I remember seeing him in the hallway afterwards, and I looked him and then just looked away, because he was so unhappy. And I'll tell you one more story and then we'll wrap it up. But you know, I've been to Colts games. I used to work for Steven Stills, who was good friends with your owner and stuff. And he was also good friends with the Mannings, who were a great family. And another time I'll tell you who's the middle Manning, who's the Giants, Eli Manning. I'll tell you the Eli Manning stories, because I've been there where they all hugged after he won the Super Bowl in Phoenix, you know, when the Giants beat them.
Oh man.
Yeah, no, yeah. I've done some crazy things around those guys, but I remember walking around the field. I think the Colts were in another Super Bowl. I think they played in New York as well, against like the Seahawks or something like that.
They played another one against the Saints. In Miami. Yeah.
Was I okay? And did they win or they lost? I
They
was
lost.
okay.
Yeah,
So I
that
was
one.
at that one too, right? That was a
Yeah.
fun after thing because I remember partying with the Saints was insane, but on the field, like they threw down. But anyway, I remember we sort of had access to the field before the game, so you just walk around and take selfies and like post it on Facebook so your friends could be like, "Dude, how the hell are you on the field at the Super Bowl?" Right? And I remember walking over to the Colts side, and I would walk like right up to where the players were, right? And and what's his name? What's the Manning? What's the main your guy? The Colts.
Peyton Manning.
So Peyton is. I'm not a sports guy, if you can't tell. So
That's
Peyton
all
is.
right,
It's
man.
all wasted on me, right? So Peyton
Yeah.
is like stretching his hamstrings, right? And he's just stretching his hamstrings, and he looks up, and I'm like 10 feet from him, and he looks up at me with his game face, right? With his eyes so intense, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And I just like turned and walked away because it was like seeing a killer. Do you know what I mean? He just looked up like, what is this little punk doing standing there? And probably saw through me, but he was prepping because he was about to be in the Super Bowl in 10 minutes. You know what I mean? And like, here's a smiling idiot like taking pictures. And I'll never forget the look in his eye because it was like, damn, dude. And then you met him in life and he's like, hey, how you doing? He's like a goofy guy, nice guy. But damn, I'll never forget the intensity that he had in his eyes. It was like he was a great champion, great player, man.
Yeah. No, he's the greatest of all time, in my opinion. Tom Brady has more championships, but as far as talent, Peyton Manning, that's the guy.
Absolutely.
That's the guy I'm taking.
Tom Brady gets no respect in this house, baby. That's the reason I stopped. I stopped doing the Super Bowl because I got sick of Tom Brady and Patriots fans and flying across the country with them because you have to travel to the Super Bowl, and I would always be in the airport with these lunkheads from Boston, and I'm a New Yorker, so we kind of hate each other anyway. We're basically cousins because we're both obnoxious northeasterners, but like, man, I just got so sick of it. And just this year was just awful. And the year they came back against it was the Southern team. They
The
came
Falcons?
back.
Yeah.
Oh, God, that was the worst. Because here's the
Oh,
thing their fans only want to win, and they're the horrible sports, right? So, like, they don't even look at the plays. They just want to see the score. But they'll turn around and turn their back to the field because they're like, don't tell me what happens unless Brady scores, unless we get a, fourth down. Don't even tell me. Like, they don't even watch the game. They just want to win and walk out of there and be like, oh, we won. So, but I got to watch them get their asses kicked twice. Once on your home field, that second 2012 or whatever, they got their butts kicked in that horrible cold Super Bowl in
we
Indianapolis,
take pride in that. We take pride in that.
Lucas Oil Stadium. That was like, yeah, well, I don't want to insult you. That was not the funnest town to have a Super Bowl in, brother.
Well, yeah, like I told you in the first pod that we did, that's warm for February, man. You gotta count your blessings in Indy.
I hear you.
Uh,
Brother. I remember walking to the NFL experience like the day before the game, and it was all like tented in. It was right near the stadium on a street, and it was just like miserable, like freezing rain and everything.
I wonder if we'll get another one, but it was
I know.
fun to have the one,
Yeah,
you
we had
know.
Madonna there. I think Madonna was no, Madonna wasn't
Was
this.
it?
Was it Madonna?
I know that CeeLo Green dropped like 100,000 in one indie strip club. I do know that.
Yeah, that makes
It was
sense.
pretty heavy amount, but
Yeah, I had to fish him out of a swimming pool in Las Vegas once at the VMAs with Dave Grohl. Dave Grohl threw him in the swimming pool. And then Dave jumped in, and then me and Dave's manager were trying to get him out of the pool at an after party. But I'll tell you that story another time, brother.
yeah, absolutely. Looking
All right.
forward to it.
So we ran up some pod. All right. So thanks for tuning in, guys. My guest producer today was the great Jimmy Kennedy. He has his own podcast. Why don't you tell them about your podcast and where they can find JPK on air?
jbkonair.com is the website. You'll find all the different locations you can get the podcast: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, and also on SoundCloud. If you search JBK on air, it should come up.
Check it out, guys. I'm on one of those episodes. So is the great Brent Terhune, right?
Yeah.
So is
We
Corey, Buttermilk guy, right?
Yeah, and we just had well, we also had a couple guys from the Bob and Tom show. Anybody from the Midwest that listens to that syndicated show. My dad worked for their band in the 90s, so I know a bunch of those guys. So, we get some guests on there. I try my
Okay.
best.
It ain't about the guest anyway. It's about the host, man. Right?
Exactly.
Right on,
Exactly.
brother. Well, you're a good dude, and I appreciate you coming on the show today, man.
You bet. Absolutely.
All right. Thanks. Be well, man. Say hi to Indy for me.
Will do. Take care, man. Bye
Thank you.
bye.
Bye.